Jake Morrison stood straight in the huge crystal room where the Galactic Council met. His hands were behind his back and his face showed no emotion. Even though every alien in the room was looking at him like he was some kind of joke, the chamber was so big that Jake could barely see the far walls, and it echoed with strange sounds from dozens of different alien species. Lisa Carter stood next to Jake wearing her best diplomatic uniform. She had been Earth's main representative to the galaxy for 3 years now, and she knew how these meetings went. The aliens would listen to what humans had to say, and then they would laugh and say no. It happened every single time, but Lisa kept trying because that was her job. The Vexthari delegate was a tall gray creature with tentacles instead of arms, and when it found something funny, those tentacles would ripple like water. Right now, they were rippling a lot. Next to the Vexthari sat the hive mind queen, who looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and big black eyes. When she was amused, she would click her mouth parts together in a rhythm. That sounded like someone tapping on glass. The biggest alien in the room was called the Archon Prime, and it was so tall that Jake had to tilt his head back to see its face. The Archon Prime was made of some kind of energy that held the shape of a person, but Jake could see through it like it was made of colored smoke. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once and made Jake's teeth hurt. "Humans," the Archon Prime said, and its voice filled the entire chamber. "Your species wants to join our military cooperation programs, but you have not even learned how to build a proper space station. How can you expect us to trust you with real weapons when you still use chemical rockets to leave your planet?" The room erupted in what Jake could only call laughter, even though it sounded nothing like human laughter. The resonants were crystal beings that looked like living diamonds, and they made musical sounds when they were happy. Right now they were chiming like church bells, and their bodies were flashing colors that Jake's translator said meant they thought humans were cute but stupid. Even the ethereals were showing amusement, and they were supposed to be the nice ones. They looked like ghosts made of light, and they communicated through emotions rather than words. Jake could feel waves of gentle condescension coming from their direction, like they were patting him on the head and telling him to run along and play. Ryan Blake was standing on Jake's other side, and Jake could see his jaw muscles twitching. Ryan had been in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years, and he had fought in 3 different wars to protect human colonies from pirates and hostile aliens. The idea that these council members thought humans were weak and helpless made Ryan angry, but he kept his mouth shut because this was a diplomatic mission. Lisa had spent months preparing for this presentation. She had worked with Earth's best scientists and military leaders to put together a proposal that would show the galaxy that humans were ready to be full partners in galactic civilization. The presentation included detailed plans for new ship designs, military tactics that humans had developed, and scientific research that could benefit every species in the galaxy, but the aliens were not interested in any of it. They had already decided that humans were too primitive to be useful. The Vexthari delegate made a sound that the translator turned into words. "These creatures think they can contribute to galactic defense when they have only been in space for less than a century. My species has been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years, the hive mind queen joined in with her clicking laughter. "The humans defeated some pirates, and they think they are warriors. They have never faced a real enemy like the Draon Empire. If the Draon ever attacked human space, there would be nothing left but empty planets." Jake wanted to point out that humans had actually fought the Draon twice and won both times, but he knew it would not matter. These aliens had made up their minds about humanity long before this meeting started. They saw humans as children playing with toys, and nothing Jake could say would change that opinion. Dr. Helen Foster was sitting in the observation area, taking notes on everything the aliens said. She was Earth's top expert on alien psychology, and she had warned Jake that this might happen. According to her research, most of the council species expected new civilizations to spend hundreds of years as junior members before being allowed to participate in important decisions. The fact that humans had gone from first contact to requesting full membership in only 50 years had scared some of the older species. The formal vote was just a formality. Every species except the ethereals voted against the human proposal. and even the ethereals only abstained rather than voting yes. The Archon Prime announced the decision with what sounded like satisfaction in its strange voice. The Council has decided that humanity is not ready for expanded membership or military cooperation. Perhaps in a few centuries when your species has matured you may reapply. Lisa gathered her papers and datapads with the same calm dignity she had shown throughout the meeting. She thanked the Council for their time and said that humanity looked forward to continuing their productive relationship. But Jake could see something in her eyes that had not been there before. It was not anger or disappointment, but something colder and more dangerous. That night, the Earth delegation met in their embassy quarters. The building was supposed to be secure, but everyone knew the aliens were probably listening to everything they said. Lisa activated a small device that would scramble any recording equipment, and then she looked around the room at her team. Well, she said quietly, that went exactly as expected. The question now is what we do about it. Jake had been thinking about the same thing during the long flight back to the embassy. We could try again next year with a different approach. Lisa shook her head. No, Jake, we have tried different approaches for 3 years now. It does not matter what we offer or how. We present it. They have decided we are children, and children do not get to sit at the adult table. Ryan was cleaning his sidearm even though weapons were not allowed in council chambers. It was a nervous habit he had picked up during the war. So what are you suggesting, Ambassador? Lisa was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke her voice was very calm. I am suggesting that maybe it is time we stopped asking for permission and started making our own decisions. The Council thinks we need them, but I wonder how much they actually need us. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had known Lisa for 5 years, and he had never heard her talk like this before. What exactly are you planning, Lisa? She smiled, but it was not a happy smile. I'm planning to find out what happens when humans stop playing by the galaxy's rules and start playing by our own. 3 weeks after the council meeting, something strange started happening across human space. Without any warning or announcement, human representatives began disappearing from every galactic organization. They did not make angry speeches or file formal complaints. They simply packed their things and left. Admiral Sam Rodriguez was drinking his morning coffee on the bridge of the Earth Defense Ship Liberty when the encrypted message arrived. The transmission was marked with the highest security codes, and when Sam opened it, he found only a few lines of text. Operation Silent Dawn is now active. All human personnel are to withdraw from Council space within 72 hours. No exceptions. No explanations. Sam had been expecting something like this ever since Ambassador Carter returned from the Council meeting 3 weeks ago. The official report said the meeting had gone as expected, but Sam had served with Lisa Carter during the Draon War, and he knew what she looked like when she was planning something dangerous across 17 different star systems. Human colonies started following plans that had been prepared months ago in secret. Dr. Patricia Wells received her orders while she was working late in her laboratory on Mars. She was the director of the Mars Research Institute, and she had spent 5 years working on joint projects with alien scientists. Now she had to destroy all of that work and make sure no alien could access any human research data. Patricia felt sad as she watched her assistant delete files that contained years of breakthrough discoveries. The anti-gravity research project had been so close to success, and the new medical treatments could have saved millions of lives across the galaxy. But the orders were clear, and Patricia had sworn an oath to follow them no matter what. Captain Tony Mitchell was commanding a convoy of human merchant ships when he got the Recall order. His fleet had been carrying rare metals to the Crystalline Collective for 2 years, and the aliens depended on those shipments to keep their technology working. Tony looked at the cargo manifest and realized that his ships were carrying enough rare earth elements to power an entire crystalline world for a month. Change course, Tony told his navigation officer. We are going home. The navigation officer looked confused. Sir, the crystallines are expecting this delivery. If we do not show up, they will file a complaint with the Trade Commission. Tony smiled grimly. Let them complain to whoever they want. We will not be there to hear it. All across council space, the same scene was playing out. Human doctors left. Alien hospitals in the middle of treating patients. Human engineers walked away from construction projects that were half finished. Human teachers stopped showing up to schools, where they had been educating young aliens about galactic history and science. The most important withdrawal happened on the Council's homeworld, where Ambassador Elena Rodriguez had been representing humanity for 8 years. Elena had friends among the alien diplomats, and some of them had even invited her to their homes for dinner. But friendship did not matter now because Elena had her orders. Elena submitted humanity's formal withdrawal from all galactic organizations through a single page document that she delivered to the Council Secretary at exactly midnight local time. The document was written in the coldest diplomatic language possible, and it gave no reasons for humanity's decision. It simply stated that, effective immediately, Earth was ending its participation in all Council activities. The Council Secretary was a small furry creature called a pip who had always been friendly to Elena. When the pip read the withdrawal notice, its fur changed from blue to orange, which meant it was confused and upset. Ambassador Rodriguez, surely there has been some mistake. Humans cannot simply leave the Council. There are procedures and protocols. Elena picked up her briefcase and walked toward the door. There is no mistake, Secretary Wimble. Humanity is exercising its right to withdraw from organizations that do not serve our interests. Good evening. Elena left the building and walked to the spaceport where the last human transport ship was waiting. As her ship lifted off from the Council world, Elena looked down at the lights of the alien city below and felt no sadness at all. She had tried for 8 years to make the aliens understand that humans were equals, but they had chosen to treat her people like children. Now they would learn what it meant to lose something they had never appreciated. The Council's first reaction was exactly what Elena had expected. Most of the alien delegates were amused rather than concerned. The Vextari representative made jokes about humans taking their toys and going home. The Hive Mind Queen said she was glad the disruption had been eliminated. Even the Archon Prime seemed satisfied that the galaxy would be more orderly without human interference, but some of the aliens were not so confident. The ethereal representative tried to send messages to human space asking what had gone wrong and offering to discuss any problems. The messages were delivered, but no one answered. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. Dr. Kenthar was the chief scientist for the Crystalline Collective, and he was the first alien to realize that something serious was happening. 3 of his most important research projects had stopped working the day after the humans left. Not because the equipment was broken, but because the human scientists had been the ones who really understood how everything worked. The crystallines were very advanced, but they thought in straight lines while humans seemed to think in spirals and curves. Human scientists could look at a problem that had stumped alien experts for years and find a solution in days. Without the humans, Dr. Kenthar was discovering that his research team was not nearly as smart as they had thought they were. Captain Steve Parker commanded a patrol fleet for the Vextari Defense Force, and he was having his own problems. The sectors that humans had been patrolling were now seeing massive increases in pirate activity. Steve had not realized how much work the human patrols had been doing because they operated in areas that the Council considered unimportant. Steve requested additional ships to cover the human patrol routes, but his commanders told him there were no ships available. The Vextari fleet was already stretched thin, covering the important trade routes, and they could not spare vessels for remote sectors. Pirates seemed to understand this because they were getting bolder every day. By the end of the first month after the human withdrawal, it was becoming clear that humanity had not just been participants in galactic civilization. They had been supporting it in ways that no one had bothered to notice. But the Council still believed that humans would come back once they realized their mistake. After all, where else could they go? The Council was about to learn that humans were very good at finding new places to go, and they did not always ask permission before they went there. 2 years had passed since the humans vanished from Council space, and the problems were getting worse every day. What had started as minor inconveniences were now becoming serious threats to galactic stability. The council members who had laughed at humanity's withdrawal were no longer laughing. Commander Steve Parker stared at his tactical display and tried not to show his frustration to his crew. 3 more merchant convoys had been attacked by pirates in the past week, and his patrol fleet was spread so thin that they could barely respond to distress calls. The sectors that humans used to patrol were now completely lawless, and the pirates were using them as bases to launch attacks on Council trade routes. Steve had requested additional ships from High Command 6 months ago, but the answer was always the same. There were no spare vessels available, and the existing fleet would have to make do. What the Vexthari commanders did not understand was that the human patrol ships had been doing the work of 3 normal fleets with half the resources. The pirates seemed to know exactly which routes were no longer protected. They struck with perfect timing and disappeared back into the empty sectors before any council ships could respond. Steve suspected that some of the pirate crews included former human military personnel who knew exactly how council patrols operated. Dr. Kenthar was having an even worse time than Commander Parker. The Crystalline Collective's most important research facility had been forced to shut down 3 major projects because they could not solve the technical problems that humans had been handling. The fusion reactor design that was supposed to power the next generation of crystalline cities had failed every test for 18 months. Kenthar had tried hiring scientists from other alien species, but none of them could think the way humans did. The Vexthari were too logical and missed creative solutions. The resonants were too focused on mathematical perfection and could not adapt when experiments went wrong. Even the brilliant ethereals approached problems too slowly and carefully. Humans had been different. They would look at a failed experiment and immediately start trying new approaches that seemed crazy until they worked. They made intuitive leaps that other species could not follow, and they were not afraid to break rules if breaking rules led to better results. Without them, the crystalline research program was stuck in endless loops of careful analysis that led nowhere. The hive mind queen was discovering her own problems in the mining operations that fed her empire. Human mining techniques had allowed her workers to extract valuable minerals from asteroids that other species considered too dangerous to approach. The humans used controlled explosions and flexible equipment that could adapt to unstable conditions. Without human expertise, 3 of the Queen's most profitable mining claims had been abandoned after equipment failures killed dozens of workers. The Queen had tried to reverse engineer the human mining machines, but her technicians could not understand how they worked. The machines seemed to operate on principles that violated several known laws of physics. Even worse, the abandoned mining sites were now being claimed by unknown vessels that appeared whenever the Queen's scouts tried to return. The strange ships used technology that did not match any known galactic civilization, and they disappeared whenever Council patrol fleets approached. Someone was taking over the territories that humans had left behind. The most disturbing reports were coming from the ethereal monitoring stations that kept watch on the galaxy's outer regions. The ethereals had the most advanced sensor technology in known space, and they had been detecting unusual energy signatures in previously unexplored sectors for over a year. High ethereal Zementh floated in his meditation chamber studying the latest sensor data. The energy patterns were definitely artificial, and they suggested massive construction projects in areas where no known species had ever established colonies. The readings indicated cities floating in open space and shipyards that were larger than anything the Council had ever built. Most troubling of all, the new energy signatures matched theoretical human technology that Earth scientists had proposed during their Council membership. The ethereals had dismissed those proposals as impossible dreams from a primitive species. Now it seemed the impossible dreams were becoming reality. The Border Patrol Division was reporting strange encounters with unidentified vessels that used propulsion systems unlike anything in the galactic database. Captain Nicole Adams had commanded Border Patrol ships for 15 years, and she had never seen anything like the contacts her sensors were detecting. The unknown ships moved in ways that defied the standard laws of space travel. They could change direction without slowing down, and they seemed to ignore the gravitational effects of nearby stars. When Council ships tried to intercept them, the unknown vessels simply vanished as if they had never existed. Nicole had managed to get close enough to one of the mysterious ships to record detailed sensor readings. The analysis showed hull materials that were stronger than crystalline armor and power signatures that exceeded anything the Council's best engineers could design. Most unsettling of all, the ship's communication frequencies matched old Earth. Military codes, trade commission reports showed that shipping costs across major trade routes had increased by 40% in the past year. Human merchant fleets had provided stable and reliable transportation for goods that other species considered too dangerous or unprofitable to handle. Without them, the remaining shipping companies were charging premium rates for routes they once considered routine. The economic effects were spreading throughout Council space. Worlds that depended on human ship supplies were facing shortages of essential materials. The Resonants could no longer get the rare crystals they needed for their technology. The Vexthuri were running out of the isotopes that powered their cities. Even the wealthy Archon worlds were struggling to maintain their energy-based infrastructure. The Council emergency session that had been called to address the growing crisis was postponed 3 times because several member species were too busy dealing with their own problems to attend. The crystalline representative announced that his species might have to reduce their contributions to Council defense fleets because their economy was collapsing without human trade partnerships. Secretary Wimble tried to maintain order as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Pirates were operating with impunity in sectors that had been peaceful for decades. Critical research projects were failing without human scientists. Trade routes were becoming too expensive for smaller worlds to use. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something that might be humanity was building an empire that made the Council look small and weak. The species that had once laughed at human proposals were now discovering that they had made the worst mistake in galactic history. They had rejected not just Earth's friendship but their own future survival. 5 years after humanity disappeared from Council space, the galaxy faced its worst crisis in over 1,000 years. The Draon Empire had launched a massive invasion campaign across 3 sectors, and the Council military forces were collapsing under the assault. What made the situation even more terrifying was that the Draon seemed to know exactly where to strike and how to avoid the remaining Council defenses fleet. Admiral Lisa Washington watched from the command center of the Earth battleship Independence. As Draon warships swept through star systems that had been peaceful for centuries, the alien invaders moved with confidence and precision that spoke of detailed intelligence about Council military capabilities. They knew which worlds were lightly defended and which trade routes were no longer patrolled. Lisa had been commanding human deep space forces for 3 years now, and she had watched the Draon Empire grow stronger while the Council grew weaker. The Empire had been humanity's enemy for decades, but they had always been held in check by the threat of human retaliation. With humans gone from Council space, the Draon saw an opportunity to settle old scores and expand their territory. The Council's desperate attempts to contact humanity for help met with complete silence. Their emergency broadcasts reached empty space where human colonies had once thrived. The quantum communication networks that had connected Earth to the galaxy showed no trace of human civilization in any of its former territories. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from existence, but reports from the galaxy's outer rim told a different story. Merchant captains who traveled the dangerous routes beyond Council space spoke of impossible human cities floating in the void between stars. These cities were not built on planets or asteroids but hung in empty space surrounded by energy fields that defied known physics. Captain Roy Mitchell had been hauling cargo through the rim worlds for 20 years, and he thought he had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. But when his ship's navigation system failed near the Vega Nebula, he found himself face to face with something that changed his understanding of what humans were capable of building. The city stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions, and it glowed with its own internal light. Massive towers twisted through space connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solid energy. Ships moved between the structures using propulsion systems that left no exhaust trails and made no sound even in the vacuum of space. Roy tried to contact the city, but his communication equipment would not work properly near the strange energy fields. As he struggled to restart his engines, a human patrol ship appeared beside his vessel, moving so smoothly it might have been riding on invisible tracks. The patrol ship's hull was black as deep space and covered with patterns that hurt Roy's eyes to look at directly. A human voice came through Roy's communicator, speaking in perfectly calm tones. "Captain Mitchell, your vessel is experiencing technical difficulties. Do you require assistance?" Roy was so surprised to hear a human voice that it took him several seconds to respond. "Yes, I need help with my navigation system." "But I thought all humans had left this part of the galaxy." The voice was quiet for a moment before answering. "Humans left Council Space, Captain Mitchell. We did not leave the galaxy. Please hold your position while we repair your ship." A beam of blue light connected the patrol ship to Roy's cargo hauler, and within minutes all of his systems were working better than they had in years. His engines ran smoother and his life support systems were operating at 100% efficiency. When Roy checked his navigation computer, he found star charts that showed routes through space he had never known existed. "Thank you for the repairs," Roy said. "Can I ask what you are building out here?" The human voice sounded amused when it answered. "We are building the future, Captain Mitchell. The Council chose not to be part of it, so we are building it without them." Safe travels. The patrol ship disappeared as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving Roy alone with his repaired vessel and 1,000 questions. When he reached his destination and told other merchant captains about what he had seen, they thought he was lying or drunk. But word spread through the rim worlds that humans were not just surviving outside Council space, but thriving in ways that defied imagination. General Marcus Thompson was sitting in his office aboard the human command station Deep Haven when the intelligence reports started arriving from agents throughout Council space. The reports painted a picture of complete military collapse as Draon forces swept through one system after another. Council fleets that had once seemed invincible were being destroyed or captured with ease. Marcus had been expecting this invasion for 2 years, ever since human intelligence detected Draon fleet movements in preparation for a major offensive. The Empire had learned from their previous defeats at human hands, and they had spent decades building new weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter Council military doctrine. What the Draon did not know was that human military doctrine had evolved far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. The weapons and tactics that humans had shared with the Council during their membership had been outdated technology even then. The real advances had been kept secret and were now being deployed by human forces that operated in the dark spaces between the stars. The most disturbing intelligence came from resonance space, where an entire star system had fallen to the Draon in less than 6 hours. The resonance had been among the most vocal critics of human military proposals, and their crystalline cities had been considered impregnable. Now those cities were dark and silent under Draon occupation. Marcus read through casualty reports that showed millions of alien civilians killed or enslaved by the advancing Empire. Part of him felt satisfaction that the species who had mocked humanity were now paying the price for their arrogance. But Marcus was a professional soldier, and he took no pleasure in the suffering of innocent people. No matter what their leaders had done, the final intelligence report was the most significant. The Archon Prime itself had sent a coded transmission through deep space channels that humans were known to monitor. The message was simple and desperate, terms negotiable. "Please respond." Marcus smiled grimly as he forwarded the transmission to Admiral Washington. After 5 years of silence, the galaxy's most powerful beings were finally ready to admit they needed human help. The question now was whether humanity was still interested in providing that help, and if so, what price they would demand for their intervention. The Draon invasion of Council space lasted exactly 18 hours from start to finish. Not because the Council forces had finally found a way to fight back, but because humanity decided to end it. What happened during those 18 hours? would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned that humans had not just left council space but had transformed into something far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Admiral Karen Mitchell emerged from hyperspace at the head of a human fleet that made every other military force in the galaxy look like children playing with toy ships. The vessels moved through space like liquid shadow, and their hulls seemed to bend light around them, making it hard to tell exactly where they were or how big they were. When the human ships fired their weapons, the energy beams did not travel in straight lines but curved and twisted through space to hit targets that should have been impossible to reach. The battle was not really a battle at all, but a demonstration of power so overwhelming that resistance became meaningless. Draon warships that had terrorized the galaxy for generations were systematically disabled and captured by technology that seemed to operate by rules that no one else understood. The human weapons did not destroy the enemy vessels, but somehow turned off their engines and weapons while leaving the crews completely unharmed. Captain Rick Jones stood on the bridge of the human flagship watching as Draon fleets that numbered in the thousands were neutralized in minutes. Rick had been fighting the Draon Empire for most of his adult life, and he knew how dangerous and capable their military forces were. Seeing them rendered helpless so easily was both satisfying and terrifying because it showed just how far human technology had advanced during their years of isolation. When the fighting ended, Rick received orders to proceed to the Council home world where he would deliver humanity's new terms for galactic civilization. The trip that would have taken a normal ship 3 days was completed in less than an hour using human drive systems that moved through dimensions that other species did not even know existed. The council chamber looked very different when Rick arrived than it had 5 years earlier when Ambassador Carter had been laughed out of the building. Many of the alien delegates who had been so confident and dismissive were now missing, either because their worlds had fallen to the Draon or because they were too afraid to leave their home systems. The ones who remained looked at Rick with expressions that mixed fear with desperate hope. Rick wore a simple black uniform with no decorations or rank insignia, but every alien in the room knew exactly who he was and what he represented. The age of humans asking politely for permission to participate in galactic affairs was over. The age of humans telling the galaxy how things would work had begun. "The old system is finished," Rick announced to the assembled aliens, and his voice carried clearly through the chamber without any need for amplification. "Humanity offered partnership, and you chose mockery. We offered cooperation, and you chose condescension. We offered friendship, and you chose to treat us like children. Those offers will not be made again." The Archon Prime tried to speak, but Rick continued without acknowledging the interruption. "From this moment forward, humans will operate independently throughout the galaxy. We will expand into any territory we choose and establish colonies wherever we see fit. Council members may maintain their current holdings, but only under human protection and only as long as they cause no trouble." The Vextari delegate made the mistake of objecting to Rick's announcement. "You cannot simply claim authority over the entire galaxy. The Council has governed galactic civilization for thousands of years, and we have laws and treaties that must be respected." Rick looked at the Vextari with the same expression someone might use when looking at an insect that had spoken out of turn. "Your laws and treaties are worth exactly as much as your military was worth against the Draon, which is to say nothing at all. You had your chance to include humanity in your system, and you chose to exclude us. Now you get to live in our system instead." Dr. Amanda Foster stepped forward carrying a datapad that contained detailed information about human technological achievements during their 5 years of isolation. Amanda had been one of the scientists who worked on joint research projects with alien species before the withdrawal, and she understood better than most how far behind the galaxy had fallen. "During our time away from Council space," Amanda explained, "humanity has achieved faster than light travel without hyperspace networks, matter-to-energy conversion systems, gravitational manipulation technology, and defensive systems that make traditional warfare obsolete. We have also developed manufacturing capabilities that allow us to build entire cities in a matter of days rather than years. The alien delegates listened in stunned silence as Amanda described advances that should have been impossible for any single species to achieve in such a short time. The technology she was describing was centuries ahead of anything the Council had ever imagined possible. Some of the aliens began to understand that humanity had not just caught up to galactic civilization but had leaped so far ahead that comparison was meaningless. The hive mind queen attempted to organize resistance to the new human order, but her fleets were disabled before they could even leave their home system. The Crystalline Collective tried to close their borders to human expansion but found that humans could simply ignore their barriers and establish colonies wherever they pleased. Even the mighty ethereals discovered that their most advanced technology was primitive compared to what humans had developed. Ambassador Greg Miller delivered humanity's final statement to what remained of the Council. You had the opportunity to have us as partners in building a better galaxy. You chose to have us as neighbors instead. You laughed when we offered cooperation, and now you will live with the consequences of that choice. This is not negotiation or discussion. This is simply how things are going to be as human forces took up positions throughout the galaxy, establishing a new order based on human superiority rather than Council consensus. It became clear that the greatest mistake in galactic history had been made by those who thought they could dismiss Earth's children as primitive and unworthy. The species that had once filled Council chambers with mocking laughter now sat in silence, knowing that their time as the galaxy's leaders was over, and humanity's time had begun.